Okay, welcome to the job cost webinar. We're going to be reviewing the job cost module. Under File, Job Cost, we have, this is where you enter all your job information. So under File, Job Cost, Jobs, you have your job ID, which does have to be a unique number. It can be alphanumeric, but you cannot use the same number twice. So a list of potential numbers. If I click in this field and do an F12, I can get a search list of, actually I can just use my binoculars here and I can get a list of my different job numbers. And for this company, here are the different types of job numbers that they have set up. Some have dashes, some have letters, some just have numbers. Job status. Most of the jobs at first is always come in as open. You have different job statuses. You can set them to closed when the job is completed. And if it's set to closed, that stops like certified payroll reports from running. It stops, it stops you from being able to enter costs or billings to that job anymore. And we do have messages in the system in Accounts Receivable that will say this job is closed. You cannot use it on an invoice any longer. Finished means that the job is completed, so it doesn't allow you to enter any more costs or billings to it, but you still could receive AR payments and print AP checks for that job. Open is obviously open. P is cost closed, which means payables and payroll and purchase orders you won't be able to enter, but you could still enter receivables. And then receivables is the opposite, where you wouldn't be able to enter any more costs to that job, but you could still enter receivables to it. Project ID is something that is not used in our system quite yet. I mean, it is available. You can print aging reports by a project ID. So its original purpose is for if you have like a subdivision of houses that you're doing and you want them all to be linked on the aging under one project, you could set them all for the project name. So you set a project ID for the project name and then put that project ID on all the jobs that are linked to that project. And then in the agings for accounts receivable, there are options to run by project ID. So then you can run an aging just for that certain project. But it's not in any job cost report, so it's not very beneficial as far as printing job cost reports by that. Entry date is the day that you entered the job. It usually defaults to today's date or whatever day you are entering the job. So if you enter a new job yesterday, it'll default to yesterday's date. If you enter a new job today, it should default to today's date. Completion date, you can enter in when the job is completed. If you enter it in and it's a advanced date, for example, you expect to be completed on this job by December 31st and you want to put that completion date in. The only problem with that is that completion date is another thing that stops certified payroll reports from printing. So if you put a completion date in, you will not be able to print a certified payroll report for this job anymore. So you'd have to store the completion date down in the notes section if it's an estimated completion date that you want to track. And then when you are done and you don't want any more certified payroll reports for a job, then you could enter a completion date up here to stop that function from happening. Customer would be one of your existing customers. If you hit F12 in that field, it does pull up a customer list. And then you could type in the customer list and it would take you as far as or as close to that name as you can get. And then you could select it and it would populate that customer there. If the job has a purchase order number, you could put it in here. If the purchase order number exists here, it will show on the AR invoice. It will populate into the AR invoice automatically from the job file. And you have a job name and address. You can copy the address. What that copy address button does is it copies it to a clipboard, behind the scenes clipboard that you really can't see. And then you could paste it into Excel if you want to print labels, or you could paste it into Word if you want to send a letter to this address, or some kind of mailing list software that you might have. And you got your phone, your city, state, zip. You have three options of mobile, fax, and phone numbers here. The owner ID can default to, F12 again, it can default to a current customer that you have, or you don't have to have a owner ID in there. You can just type in a name, and if he's not an owner, I can just say that I am the owner without using the ID field, and it will allow that. Same with the architect ID. If you hit F12 in the ID field, again, it's looking for a customer, but if you don't have a customer that you want to, and it's somebody who's not on your customer list yet, you could just type in the name. Sales GL account ID would be the GL account ID that you would want to use for billing purposes. If you hit F12, it's going to come up with a list of your chart of accounts. Normally, you're controlled for this, so you don't need to fill this field in because it's already going to come from the job cost control file that where billings always have to go to the same GL account number. If for some reason this job you do not want to track that way, then you could put a sales GL account number here so that it would default when you're entering an AR invoice. If you did not want to use control accounts on this job, on page 2, there's an option to use control accounts. You would have to uncheck that so that control accounts are not used. Sometimes when you're entering an invoice and if control accounts is not checked, the general ledger account number will not default in on the AR invoice. That's because the control accounts option is not checked, so it can't use the control account that is set up for billings in the job cost control file. Now that control account file is under admin job cost controls, and then under control accounts, these are the accounts that if something is charged to a job, this is the account number it's going to go to. So for billings, anything that's charged to a job in AR for sales, it's going to go to 300. You enter labor to a job, a time card, it's going to go to this account. Same with accounts payable invoices. If you have a cost type of material, it's going to go to that account number, as long as there's a job attached to it. So if you don't want to use those control account numbers for specific jobs, you would uncheck this option. This pay rate table is basically a union pay rate table, so this brings up a list of your unions. This was designed for if you have, this job needs to pay prevailing wages, so you need to pay individuals more money when they work on this job because it's a government job or it's a IDOT job or airport job. Some of those types of jobs need or require them to be paid prevailing wages. So you would need to link a union. You would have to have a union set up that has those prevailing wage rates listed on them so that the higher wage rate is going to be pulled in. And then if you set up the union on this pay rate table here where it has the higher wage rates, time card entry screen will automatically, if this exists, look at that union and pull the rate from that union. So this is used for only prevailing wage rate jobs. Notes is just a section that you can type any type of notes that you want. You can keep track of things that we don't have fields for. Page 2, you can track salesmen if you do salesmen, estimators, or supervisors. These, again, all three of those fields are looking for an employee name. So it would be somebody who is normally an existing employee of yours already that would default into those fields. Furnished description is the type of work that you're doing on this job. If you're an electrical contractor and you're going to do electrical work or whatever you would normally put on your waivers, it's the type of work that you're providing. This is used on lien waivers and sworn statements, and it will default onto the lien waiver and the sworn statement, whatever you put in here. Departments, if you use departments, you would have a list of departments that you can choose from, so which department this job belongs to. You would set that here. Contract type is a way to sort certain jobs by certain contract types. So if you do like service jobs and you do T&M maintenance jobs, You may have a contract type of maintenance or a contract type of service, or you may have a contract type of construction. And just different ways you can print certain job cost reports by contract type. So if you just want, you have a certain division or certain calls that are just like P&M maintenance calls, and you want a contract type of P&M, then you could go and print a job cost report that would show you, just your P&M jobs versus all jobs. Covered area, another way to sort a job by a certain area. So you could put in here if a job is in a certain county or something. You want to see how much work you get in DuPage County or Cook County. You could set that up. It is not as popular as the contract type, where it does not always have a lot of options to print by that. It's more informational. We can pull this information into Crystal reports, and then you could print a Crystal report by covered area, and then you could see how many Cook County jobs that you do for the course of a year. If you're withholding retention on this job, you would set up a retention percentage. Most of the time, most jobs with retention will start out at 10%. Now, if I enter 10% here, it's going to ask me, do I want to change all phases on this job? If I say yes, it's going to go out to each phase on that job and put 10% as the retention, which in most cases is what you'd like to do. I'm going to go ahead and say yes. This question is if you're a general or a subcontractor on the job. This again shows on the certified payroll reports and on the lien waivers. So if you do F12 for a list, you're either a general, which is G, or an S for sub. Tax status. You have different tax statuses here that we use. And once you select the correct tax status, you can print a tax-exempt ID if they're tax-exempt. The tax-exempt ID will show on different reports as well. You can see the tax-exempt ID on when you do purchase orders for this job. It would show that it's tax-exempt and print the ID number on it. I don't think it shows on AR invoices at all, but I'm not positive about that. The certified section here is your different options for certified payroll reports. So if the job is certified, you would come to this list and you would select which certified option it is. Now, all of you do not have all of these options. Our 4 standards are the 2 Illinois ones here and the 2 federal ones. The January 09 options, there was a revision back in January of 2009 where they wanted you to hide the Social Security number and the address on certified payroll reports. So the January of 09 ones only print the last 4 numbers of the employee's Social Security number, and it hides the address completely. If you need to show the full Social Security number and the address, you would have to print one of the options that are not revised, the two standard ones that don't have the January 09. The LC export is the labor compliance export, which is also known as LCP tracker. It is a module that we have. It creates an Excel file for the certified jobs that are marked with that option, and then that Excel file can be uploaded to LCP Tracker website for submitting the certified payroll reports. We have a couple City of Chicago reports, the housing, and this is the Department of Planning and Economic Development one, which is similar to housing but slightly different, and then the City of Chicago certified report. Those, along with the LCP Tracker report or the labor compliance export, those are all additional cost. If you are interested in those or need any of those, you can contact your salesman and they can give you a quote as to how much those would cost. Once you've set up to say that this particular job is certified, and it's certified for, let's just say, Illinois, you can set the no work this week flag to check that. That means that even if you don't have work during payroll that week, nobody worked on that job, it's still going to print you a certified payroll report that says no work this week on it. A lot of times you have to submit those regardless of whether you worked on the job or not. Certified number of weeks starts out at 0. Our certified payroll report will not print if the certified number of weeks is set to 0. This gets updated in increments of 1 every time you post payroll to job cost. So a part of your closing steps in payroll is to run the post payroll to ledger job cost. That goes out and increases the certified weeks by 1 for all your certified jobs. So if you're trying to print a report before you've posted the first week of work on this particular job, it would not print a report because it's set to 0. So once you do, you can manually come in here and you can manually set this to 1, and then you can get a report to print. But once you do post, then it increments it by 1. So if you manually set it to 1 and then you post, a couple days later, it's going to change this to 2, even though you've only worked on the job 1 week. So you'd want to come back here and adjust that. Route, county, all this is information that will print on the certified report if it's filled in. It's not necessary. Certified email, if you want to, we have an option to email our certified reports now. So you could type in a legitimate email address, and it will then send the email for the certified payroll report. Notes is another place to see notes. It's the same thing as here. You'd see the same information, just a larger page. User field is a place to store additional information that we might not have a spot for. If you want to keep track of a permit date or insurance date or bid date or job date when you actually got the job, you have 4 different date fields to choose from. You can track numbers back here if you want to track certain numbers of whatever whatever information you need. And then the text is also, you could store different information in here, contact information, phone numbers, anything that you might require that you didn't find a field for on the job tabs. Under phases, this is where you would enter and maintain any phases for the job. You have a list of master job phases. So if you use binoculars here, you've got some blank job ID phases. Those are called your master phases. So these are basically your list of phases that you're going to use on most every job, or a combination of some of these will be used on most every job. So the master phases don't get any information attached to them. They just get used to copy to your real jobs. So on the phases, on the real jobs, you would have your job ID, your phase ID, which would be one of your master phases. Your description will default from whatever's on the master phase, but you can change the description to be whatever you'd like it to be for this particular job. So on this job, 222 is roofing. On the next job, 222 might be excavating for whatever reason. If you want to change the description, you have that ability. If this is a change order, you would enter a change order ID. Normally we recommend like CO for change order, maybe -1. Once you do change order ID, the change order entry date and status gets opened up. Now the entry date would be the day that you entered the change order. Status, if it's approved already, you would set it to approved. Otherwise, your other options are either pending or rejected. Change order status date, which means what date do I want this change order to be effective on my contract billing. So if I have contract billing and my change order is not effective to December 1st, the change order amount is not going to appear in my contract totals until December 1st. So I could run an invoice today. It would exclude this change order even though I entered the change order yesterday. Vendor ID would be if there's a vendor that is associated with this change order, the guy who's going to do the work. This will also default on the sworn statements and the lien waivers as the vendor that is going to be doing the work for this particular phase. Labor expense account is you could enter a labor GL account number. If you use the control accounts, though, it is going to pull it from there, so you don't need to have one here. Workers' comp code, if you wanted a certain workers' comp code associated with this job. Some people have like OSIP jobs that have They have to have a certain workers' comp code to report on those. You could then use F12 here, and you could select from the list of which workers' comp code you would want to default on here. Same with sales GL account number. If this is a controlled job, you don't need to worry about it. If it's not controlled, you could fill that in. Department, this is for on the phase now, and this department on the phase should not be set if the department is on the job. It should only be set in one spot, either the job or the individual phases. Most likely the job is going to all be for the same department, but in a rare occasion where you might have different phases for different departments, you would then set the department on the phase, but then you should not set it on the job. Retention percentage would come over from the job, or you could set it here on an individual basis. Phase type, you can set phase types, which is similar to contract type. It's just a way to be able to group the phases. Contract type, again, there's no list for that. It's just whatever you want to type in. You can have a contract type of C, you can have a contract type of X, whatever you want to sort that phase by. Cost to complete and percent complete works with our WIP reports or work in process reports. You can individually set the cost to complete and the percent complete for this phase, so that when you run the work in process report, it will show you, based on the information that you've entered here, what your work in process totals are. There's another way to do the work in process percents and cost to complete, which I'll show you in a few minutes. Reference ID is individual. If you need a reference ID for this phase, a reference ID would be something that is just informational only. It's not going to show up anywhere. Same with job size. If you wanted to, you could set a job size if you want to look at your job sizes that are over $500,000 or under $500,000, and then you can pull a crystal report that shows you work that you did over a certain amount of dollar value or under a certain amount of dollar value. Sort group is a way to group phases on the job cost reports. So if you have a lot of phases on a job and you have a sort group on there, your sort group can be concrete or landscaping, and you have certain landscaping phases. Even if they're not sequential, you put the same sort group on them, they will sort on and you print the job cost balance report by sort group, they will group those phases together so that then they will show up together on the balance report. So you could have 20 phases, the first 2 and the last 2 are the same sort group, so then it would print those 4 together so that you can see totals for that job by those sort groups. Sales tax percentage is an informational place to enter a sales tax, whatever the percentage that you're going to charge for sales tax on this phase. And then there's also a date completed phase if you want if you want to show a date completed that you completed the phase. Contract billable means that you want this phase to show on your contract billing. If this is not a contract billable phase, then you could uncheck that if you don't want it to show up in your accounts receivable billing totals. Certified EEO, you can exclude certain phases from certified payroll reports and EEO reports. If this is a subcontract phase, you can select subcontract, and it would be on your sworn statements and your lien waivers, it would show that this phase is a subcontractor phase. Notes is just the notes section to store any type of information. Original estimates, this is a place where you would enter your original estimates for this phase. So whatever your billings are going to be, your cost, you can enter your cost and your billing estimates on here. Price per unit here is going to be set equal to your price per unit on your billings line. So you have units, price per unit, and then your total. And you can also enter your estimated costs. If this was a change order, you would enter your change order estimates on this tab, and you would enter your billing change order units. Change orders can be positive or negative. So if I have 1,000 units and they've decided that they don't want to do part of what I've already estimated them, then I can enter in here my change order. This will change my price per unit on the original estimate tab. If I say yes, this then changed that price per unit. It updated it. If I want it to be a negative because I want to reduce it, then I'm going to, and again, it's going to change my price per unit. Every change I make, it's going to try to change my price per unit. So then it'll give me my negative $500 with I'm reducing my contracts by that amount. Current estimate gives you then a total of your original estimate plus your change orders to give you your current estimate. You can't change anything in here. It's just informational so that you could review what your current estimates are. User fields, again, place to store additional information that we don't already have a spot for. If I want to print this, it normally would come up to print a job ticket report, and that must be something set wrong in this company because that's not working. Under projects, this is where if you wanted to use the projects option that you could set up your project ID and name to use that option. Residential billings is a program that only a couple of our clients use. I'm not going to review that. That's not something that's available to anybody besides the ones who already use it. Original estimates on grid is another way to enter estimates. Instead of each individual phase, this original estimates on grid screen will bring up all of your phases for this job. And then you would be able to come in here and just go on down the line and enter your estimate amounts. So I can just use my arrow keys and go down and put in my estimates, and it's going to add to the totals. I can do the same thing with my costs. It's going to then add up your total costs. It's going to show you the gross margin, which is your cost, your total cost less your billings, your gross margin percent. You can also enter production units here if you want to track production. So let's say you're pouring sidewalks and you've got 6,700 lineal feet of sidewalks and you want to do 100 lineal feet a day of sidewalks. You can track production through our payroll system. You can enter here how much production you need to do on this particular phase, and then you can enter production when you enter the time cards for the work that you're doing on that phase, and it will subtract and it'll show you how much production you've done to date and then how much you have left to do. So you can track how well you're doing on if you have a certain time frame you want to get this done by, and you need to do a certain amount of lineal footage a day on sidewalk. You can then track what you're getting done on a per day basis. So once you've entered the estimates that you want, you would go ahead and click apply, and it would apply your estimates, and then you can say OK. Job phase estimate imports is a way to, instead of entering job phases manually, you could import them. So basically you're importing them from an Excel spreadsheet, and we do have file layouts. If anybody's interested in doing that, we can send you the file layout. The layout of all of our imports is actually located on your computer already, and it would be in the CSC Win folder and in the MIS folder. And there's a document in the MIS folder called README, README.txt. Inside there has all of our file imports. Job phase import is one of them. Shows you the layout the Excel sheet needs to be in so you can import it into our software. You would browse out here to the Excel sheet and pick the Excel sheet, and then it would import in. Change orders on grid is like the other, like the estimates on grid, original estimates, but only it's for change orders. So anything that has a change order ID of 1, because that's how I set it up, would come up and show here, and then you can enter your change orders this way instead of manually going into the job phase screen one at a time and entering them. Drill down is a way to see how you're doing on a job or what your current status is. You can select a job range. Since you don't see a bunch of jobs, you can select a contract type here, which was the contract type on the job file. You also have phase type, so you could just see certain contract types or certain phase types. Or you can have a choice for department. You can see it for certain salesmen, certain customers. You can limit how much data you see by selecting some of these fields. I'm just going to select it all. Basically, it's going to bring in every job that you have if you select it all. And it's going to show you the name. It's going to show you your totals. These are your actual numbers. These are not any estimates. These are actual. This is what your actual billings, actual costs, actual profit, and actual percent of profit. And it shows you a breakdown of all your costs. Now, if I want to see what makes up these costs, I can drill into it with the green box with the black arrow, and it's going to show me the billings. It's going to show me all the accounts receivable transactions that were billed out for this particular job. I can drill back up with the green box with the black arrow on the right-hand side. It takes me back to the top level. If I see something here like equipment and I want, well, what is this equipment? I can drill in here and I can see where it's coming from. It came from payroll because of my reference ID here. And then some equipment also came from AP. And I can see what the charges were. Maybe something was charged wrong, so then this will show me, and I can say, okay, we need to correct this because this is not right. Now, you cannot print this screen at all. You'll notice my toolbar is empty. You can do a print screen of this, but you cannot print this as a report. Again, you always drill back up on the right side. So this will show you all of your different cost types. These are your cost types across the top here. And you can even look at open purchase orders. So if you want to know what that open purchase order is, it would take you then to the purchase orders that are on this. And you can see why they're still considered open, if they should have been closed, or if they should not even be on this, or there's something that you haven't received yet that you need to get in contact with the vendor and find out why you haven't received it. Copy jobs and phases. If you set up a job and you want to copy phases to it, you have the option to copy your jobs and phases instead of manually entering them. If you just want to copy from the phase master, from the master job, you would leave the job ID blank. And then you could either put in a range of phases that you want to copy, or if you leave it blank, it would copy all of them. If you wanted just to select certain phases, you could choose the Select Phase button. It brings up a list of your master phases, and you could then go through here and you could say, I just want to copy those 3. And it's going to ask you for a beginning job ID. So you could put in your job ID. It doesn't even really have to exist, because you could use the option to create jobs where jobs don't exist. So what that will do is it'll go out and it will create a new job and put those phases that I've selected on it. Now, if you wouldn't normally have estimates on your master job, but if you're copying from a different job and you want to copy from a different job that's similar to this one, but you don't want to transfer estimates, then you would need to uncheck that, because the estimates are most likely going to be different. Okay, so if you had phase notes and You wanted to copy the phase notes, you could leave that checked. If you didn't want to copy the phase notes, of course, you could uncheck that. Same with replace phase names and copy job notes. You don't have to, you can choose which options you want to do. Cost percent complete. This is the other area where you can enter your cost percent complete. So if I want to choose my job 10, I can choose to either do by cost to complete or percent complete. And I can enter my information on a per phase basis. I can say that my cost to complete for this phase, I can go phase by phase and set how much my cost to complete is. So my current estimate on this particular phase was 10,000, and let's say I want to say that I have 5,000 left to go on here. Okay. I apply that. It's going to then change my, if I go to job cost phases, my binoculars, phase 10, job 10, it's going to set my cost to complete to $5,000 because that's what I set it to complete here. Same thing with the percent complete. If I chose percent complete here, then I would use the percent complete option, and I could say that I am 50% complete, and then I would apply that. When I go back to my job phase, it updated my cost to complete based on what my job to date cost is here. I did not put my percentage in there like I expected it to, but it did update my cost to complete based on the fact that I say I'm 50% complete, but my job to date costs are already at 25,000. So then it gives you your projected cost of 51. Material tracking is a way to track what you've purchased on a purchase order or what requisitions you have from inventory and the status of where they're at. So for example, if you've received the item, its location is considered to be warehouse. If the item's not been received through purchase order, then you have item not received. If it's been received and shipped, that means that it's gone to the job site already. So if you have material that you've purchased and you want to keep track of where it's at, what the current status of it is, you can double check and say, okay, this stuff is still sitting in the warehouse supposedly. Let's see why it hasn't shipped. And then if it has shipped, you can say, okay, we did ship that. So I can change my ship date here to be the day it shipped, and now it's changed this that it's at the job site. And you say, well, yeah, I did receive this, so you can set received date. That's not letting me do that. So that probably comes from the purchase order. So that received date would come in when you receive the purchase order, which this purchase order has not been received yet. But you could track what things are being shipped to the warehouse and what things are still sitting there and what things have gone to the job site and what things have not been received. So you could go to this purchase order and receive that line item if it has been received. Production units are another way to enter production units besides entering them through payroll. So if you track production, you can enter new production this way on a per phase basis if you don't want to enter it through the payroll time card system. And then it will keep track of your cumulative production So then you can run reports and you can show how much production you've done to date. So you'd simply add new production for each phase based on, we did the one thing here, then it would show you what percent you are complete for your production. Under ledger, this is the same place as the general ledger. It allows you to make changes to job-related transactions. So you can move things from one job to another. If you want to, you can enter depreciation. I don't think any of these have jobs on them. Oh, this one does. You could enter production units this way as well. So I can enter my production units as a journal entry just by putting an amount in the production units column and selecting my cost type of production. I have options for different cost types or whatever my cost types are. I can say labor, and if I want to move hours from one job to another, I can do that through a journal entry instead of through payroll. The hours would show up as units, and the dollar amount obviously shows up as the amount. If I want to change jobs, so something got posted to the wrong job, I can change it here by moving it from one job to another. Posting ledger to job phases is the end of the month procedure where you would close out the month and post the ledger to job phases, which means that they can't be changed in the job cost transactions. Under reports, job cost, you have drill down again, which is the exact same drill down that we had on the file menu option, just another place to see it. Sometimes some of your field guys have access to reports, but they don't have access to file because you don't want them to enter things or change things. So then they could at least still see the drill down in the reports section. Job list is a way to print the job list. You can also print a phase list and a project list. These just give you a listing of the jobs. The only thing you can do that's a little different is on the phase list, you can just print the phase master, and it'll give you just a list of your master phases. Job tickets. You can print a job ticket, which basically pulls information from the job file. I can change my heading. I can use it as a proposal, a contract, or a work order. I can print information, page 1 information from the job file, page 2. Excuse me. I can print user notes. I can print job notes. I can print phase information. I can even print a signature line. If I print phase information, then I can print dollars, units, or both. So I would want to say both. And if I go to the screen, this would show me information about this job and phase and the type of work that I'm going to do and the price that I'm going to charge for it. Now on my last page, I can have a signature. So I can show as much or as little information on this as I want to. But if I need something delivered to a job site and I want the person who's receiving it and the person who's delivering it to sign off on it, then I have 2 spots here that I can use to have them sign off on it. Lien waiver option. If you have that option, you can print a lien waiver. If it had a vendor ID, it would show up here as the vendor ID. It defaults in the contract prices on the phases. The amount paid, it goes out and calculates based on your receipts. This payment, if you had an invoice that you were printing this off of, because you can also print this through Accounts Receivable invoices, this payment would default in here based on what's showing on your phase for that invoice. You can use the numbers that default here, or you can change them to be whatever you want them to be. You can also clear all detail. If I do that, it gets rid of everything, and then I can add my own. So then I can use the double plus key. If I don't want to show a vendor, I can say concrete. I can say my contract price was $50,000, and I got paid $10,000, getting paid another $10,000. Oops. Which leaves my balance due of 30. I can choose whether it's a final waiver, material taken from stock option, rental equipment, principal suppliers. This information here all defaults from the job file. So I can default what state I want, the county. These are all things that are on the job file. You can change whatever defaults in here, or you can use what defaults. The signature as well, that also comes from job cost control file. If I want to change that because she's not in today, so I want somebody else to sign it, I can just type over the name that I want to sign. When I go to print the waiver, it's going to print in the Chicago Title and Trust format. You just print it to plain paper, and it gives you all the information. If I want a final waiver, I print it. It changes from waiver of lien to date to final waiver of lien. I can't save this at all, so if I need to do another waiver, I'll have to come back in here and make my changes all over again. It doesn't save what you've done on here. It just, you just come in and do it again. It's a pretty easy form to work with. Generally, you can change the company information. This is the company name and address that shows up. If, for example, you need, the customer's information on here or the jobs, you have that option. Job cost balance report. Give you a listing of jobs, and you can show your estimates. You can show profit. You can do posted only. You can, if you do just without totals only, it will show you detail of each phase. Totals only just gives you one line per job. Here you have the options to select the contract type and the phase type. You also have the option to print it by sort group. So if you added sort groups onto your jobs, then you could print it by sort group, and it would show you, it would sort it by the sort groups on those. If I want to print year-to-date and month-to-date, which is part of my month-end checklist, I have to enter an ending accounting period, not a beginning one, just an ending one. That makes these active, and now I can select those. If I were to enter beginning one, those become unactive again. I can't check them. If I wanted just certain cost types, I don't have to leave all these checked. I can uncheck whatever I don't want to see, or I can run it for all of them. If I run it this way and I say totals only, it's going to basically give me the job, the original estimate, change orders, shows me my total cost versus my total billings and my profit. And it shows you this on a per job basis. So it's just going to show you the totals per job. If I want more detail on my balance report, let's say I don't want to see estimates, but I do want to see profit, posted only. I want my month-to-date and year-to-date. This will show me each job in each phase and what my profit is on each phase, what my costs are, my billings, how much profit I have on the phase. Also, this is where your year-to-date and month-to-dates come in. It's also on a per job phase where it shows you your job to date, year to date, and month to date totals. The balance report is kind of versatile as far as different things that you can do with it. You can print reports in different ways to see where your jobs stand and where you're at. Very similar to the drill down report. So if you want to print the drill down report, you could print the job cost balance report. It's the same information, just a slightly different format. The balance report with cost types as rows is just a different way to print the balance report. If I want to print it for just one job, it actually has your cost types along the side here versus along the top. So this is just a different way to print it. If you don't like the look of the other report. Change order status. You could print for a particular job, and you can see the change orders and what the change order status is. So here's a change order. It's approved. It shows you what the status of the change order is. The variance report. Give you your phases, your estimates versus your actuals for costs. Your basically just showing you what your estimates versus your actual costs are going to be and what your variance is going to be, how much you've over or under billed for this particular phase or job. Detail ledger gives you a detailed listing of transactions that affected a job. So if I wanted to see on job 10, if I want to see my labor burden, it tells me exactly what time frame my labor burden came in from. If I want to see what equipment, I can see the time frame or I can see the detail of my costs and my billings for a particular job. Here I can see this is a billing for $5,000 in AR on March 15th. It shows me my transaction information, like my invoice number and the phase in the job. Labor hours report is a report that will show you the hours that you've worked on a particular job. So you could run it from one job for a certain payroll date, pay period date if you want to, or you can run it for all dates like I just did, and it will show you all the hours that you worked on this particular job. In this case, then it gives you job totals and shows you what day of the week the hours were worked and what the totals are per employee, or in all the employees. Now, if you want to see just for a certain employee, you can do that as well. Certain pay period range, like what we worked this year on a certain job. You can do it for a certain union. You want to see what, a certain union that you worked on. A certain union that worked on this job, how many hours they had. Work in process. You have different options here, but either based on cost to complete or based on current estimate. We recommend that you use it based on current estimate. And this gives you a combined profit and loss, or you can run a separate profit and loss. If you do a combined profit and loss, and we run this, basically shows you your total cost, job to date, your cost to complete, your estimated total cost, your percent complete, which we set that previously, and when we set our work in process information, for cost to complete. It shows you your cost and your revenue, how much you've earned, how much you've billed, your profit to date, as well as your earned in excess or your excess billed. Again, this is all based on, per job, what you have in your cost to complete or percent complete fields and your current estimates. Distribute overhead is a way to take like office overhead. If you have, office lighting and office, all your office extra costs, or perhaps fuel costs, things that aren't normally charged to a job, but they're overhead, and you want to distribute them to the job. So you could do that through this option. You would have to know if you want to distribute it based on dollars or units, if you're going to do it by month or year, and then which cost type do you want to distribute based on the labor on the job, the material. You can select multiple ones. You can do total dollars or percentage or rate. You can select the jobs that you want to distribute to and the phase that you want to distribute. And then where you want it to go when it creates the entry, because this will create a journal entry. So you want to examine these jobs, these phase ranges. You want to distribute overhead based on the totals of these jobs and phases to this particular phase. And you want it to be distributed as labor or material or whatever cost type you want. And then you can say that you want to go through a certain pay period ending date. And this will basically give you a report that'll show you what it's going to do. I don't know if this will work because of the data here. So this basically will say that it's going to distribute this type of overhead. As I said, I want to distribute $1 of an amount, so it's going to put these amounts onto these jobs and phases. So I can preview this and I can say, okay, this is what it's going to add to my overhead. Do I want to do this? You can print that report so it shows you what you will distribute. And then you could come in here, do the same thing again, but uncheck report only, and that'll actually make journal entries to distribute that overhead. Now, if after you've run this, you decide that it's not right, you can go in and delete the journal entry and start over again. Under admin job cost, you have the control file options. This is where you can say if you use certified jobs, if you want the phase match to be required. Most of these are already previously set up prior to you're using the software, so you don't have to usually come back here and make changes. This is the signatory's name and title for the waivers and the AIAs and the sworn statements. You could change that if you want to be whoever it should default to, because the person may change, they retire or they leave. You need to put a new person in here. Then you come back here and change that. You have options on that job ticket that I showed you where you could print the company name, or you can have no heading, or you can use a company logo, kind of similar to our AR invoice logo, where you can have a logo print at the top of your AR invoices. This is when you you print that job ticket program under reports, job costs, job tickets. When you do this, it will then either just print the company name standardly, or you can default a logo into there. The logo has to be this size, and it has to be a JPEG file or a PNG, some kind of picture file. You would browse to wherever it is located, select the file name, and it would populate it in there. Your cost types, you don't normally change these. These are already set up in advance. Occasionally, people will want or need to change these for some reason. That's not something we recommend you do yourselves. You would call support and ask us about the options of changing your different cost types. And these, again, are your control accounts that normally don't get changed either. If you need to reopen job cost after you've closed the month, you can unpost ledger from account balances. It will ask you what month you want to unpost. You can change it. You normally have to unpost. If you want to go back to October, you would have to unpost January, then December, then November. So you'd have to go backwards each month and unpost each month. till you get back to the month that you want. Transfer job phase transactions are another way to transfer things from one job phase to another job phase. So you put something on the wrong job, or you had two jobs out there with the same name and you didn't realize it was already an existing job. You've got costs or billings on both. You could transfer from one to the other. One job, one phase, to another job, to another phase at a time using a date range. Or if you don't want to use a date range, you could do all transactions from one job and phase to another job and phase. The only thing with this is you do have to have exclusive use of the software, so that means nobody else can be in the program when you try to run this. You have to have exclusive use of it in order for this screen to pop up. Otherwise, it will not let you do it. Delete unused phases is an option that you could delete any phases that are not used on the job. You can select just closed jobs only, or if you uncheck that, it would look through open jobs as well and delete any phases that have not been previously used for transactions. Purging transactions, we have the option to purge jobs now. So you can purge jobs based on a completion date, so to be able to reuse job numbers or to clean up your job list so you don't have job numbers out there from 10 years ago. You could run it for a certain completion date, beginning and ending, and it would purge those jobs. Now, it can't be undone and you can't bring them back. It will give you a report that will show you what it's going to purge. And then it will ask you, do you sure you want to do this? Once you do it, there's no going back from it. You do have to have accounts receivable purged, accounts payable purged, and time cards and check records purged in order to allow the jobs to purge. If there's transactions that exist, it won't allow you to purge the job. The verify step, that was the last option. That is something that we would run here if we need to. So that's not something that you guys would normally do. In our help menu, there is a job cost help section. And under the job cost monthly close, we have the job cost month end checklist. This is a checklist that you could print when you close out the month, and it gives you step-by-step guidelines on how to close the month for job cost. We recommend that you use this to make sure everything stays in balance. If you have any issues with balancing of it, you can call us and we will help you try to figure it out. Okay, I'm going to unmute everybody and give it open for questions. If you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer some now. Does anybody have any questions at all for right now? Okay, that concludes the webinar then. Hopefully you guys found it helpful, and thank you for attending. And we'll talk to you soon.